Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Gary Holt from Exodus and formerly from Slayer, and you're listening to The Razor's Edge.
James, welcome to The Razor's Edge.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
So before we talk about your new album, I wanted to just jump back to before the days of Kill the Lights. How did you first get into heavy music?
It started kind of as a going into my in the sixth form and at my secondary school in Walton Comprehensive in Peterborough, England. And so it was kind of around the time when, you've got kind of, it was kind of the latter part of kind of the Nirvana era going into kind of the new metal kind of scene with, kind of some of those bands emerging too. So a couple friends were kind of in a band. I kind of linked onto those guys and ended up going to some. I think the first ever show I went to was Korn on their opening album, and they had Incubus. Incubus were opening, and I think they were touring like the Fungus Among Us, I believe, is the EP they had. So and that was at the not in Rock City. So we snuck out and went down there on a train when we shouldn't have done. I think the second show was then kind of White Zombie. I think that was in London. So it was just kind of becoming, getting part of that scene. I by chance then managed to kind of join those guys. They had no singer, so they needed a band, and I think I was the only option. So and then got to do some kind of like shows in London, played with a band called Downset and a few other kind of rap rocky kind of bands around, and then moved to the US for a year of high school and then university, and then kind of proceeded to join bands from there, really.
Excellent. So what was the reason for moving to the US? Is it purely education, or what made you leave the UK?
So I played football. So initially it was kind of one to be able to do that in the US. And then for me, I kind of grew up on everything American too. So I wanted to kind of experience I kind of really wanted to go to high school for a year and check it out and do all that stuff, so the cultural piece was part of it. I'd been on a trip to Florida when I was a kid and just fell in love with the place. So for me, it was really just getting a chance to come over here and experience kind of the American culture. So it was one of those things that I kind of joined the band then within that year, and I said to myself, if we get a show, I'll stay in the US and come back for university, and if I don't, I'll go back to England. So we managed to get a show just before I came back, and that was with Mudvayne at the time. So when they had their LD50 album out, so things escalated pretty quickly from there. It was just kind of like literally came down to like, do we have a show or no? I'll go back to England for the rest of my life, or I'll stay in America. So, which was more to it than that, but it really came down to that,
Yeah. So going back to the formation of the band, then how did you form Kill the Lights?
So we were all previously in different acts, and so we'd all toured with each other over the years. My previous band had opened on an arena tour with Bullet, and we're all kind of Black Veil Brides were on that run too. And then Moose and Jordan toured a lot back in the day. Still Remains and Bullet did a lot of UK tours together, 3 or 4 or 5 tours. And then Travis was kind of miscellaneously toured with everybody, and then also had worked with Chris Clancy, who Chris and Colin produced the record, so they had a great relationship too. So it was kind of, it's the music industry and world is a very small place when you kind of get to know it, and everybody kind of knows everybody, so it kind of fell together pretty quickly.
Yeah. And so with all that background and different bands, do you call yourselves a supergroup, or is it just?
No, I kind of hate that term, but I always laugh. I laugh because usually in the supergroup term, I'm referred to as etc. I'm like the least known guy. You know what I mean? So I usually name everybody else, and then etc. would be James. But no, I mean, obviously that's a compliment, right? It's a great compliment, and the guys in my band were all in great bands and have done a lot of things in the music scene and industry. And when you look at kind of like the metalcore genre, they were very much a huge part of that. So like I say, it's a very big compliment. I think what I'm most excited about on this record is hopefully getting away from that and Kill the Lights, hopefully being kind of carry its own weight and its we'd be referred to as Kill the Lights on its own merits. But like I say, it's a huge compliment when people say that, and obviously people are recognizing the contributions that people have of what they've done in their other bands.
Yeah. So you're as Kill the Lights, you're about to release your second album, Death Melodies. It comes out this Friday, although this will probably go out after the album's gone out. So I've had it on repeat for a couple of days now, and it's fantastic. So how happy are you with the album?
Yeah, super happy. Yeah, I always joke because I've watched a million interviews before. People are like, well, this is the best album yet. You know what I mean? And everybody's gonna say that, right? But I feel like this for us is kind of like uh we've come together as a band now. You know, we've had enough time with each other to kind of understand how everybody works. And I feel like this one was pretty smooth the way the writing happened. It was smooth how it's came together in the studio, and we just kind of know each other a little better. And you know, I think for us it was just kind of pushing the boundaries of what we were already created. I think this record versus the first one is a space where it wasn't dudes from other bands writing music. Now it's guys in Kill the Lights writing music together, you know. So pretty happy. I think we just managed to push the boundaries on this one versus the last album, and very excited about how it turned out.
Excellent. So what goes in, you mentioned writing the albums, what goes into writing a Kill the Lights album?
I mean, countless hours of trying to figure it out is really what it comes down to. It's like anything. Sometimes we'll have, we in this situation, it was kind of part through COVID when we were writing too. So there were times where we had to fly out to Canada just to be together to write. So we did that a couple times. We wrote in the US, we wrote in the UK. I think we ended up with about 24 songs. Some writing sessions had all of us there, some had partial guys there. So it's a long process anyway. I mean, the way we work, because we're in different places, we're kind of used to having to write like that anyway. But I mean, for us, it's kind of like demoing it out first. For me, sometimes I'll get a song in the first 10 minutes. Other times I'll have to listen to it 200 times before I really get it. And there's no rhyme or reason to that. Sometimes it's just how it works. And then even going into the studio, you've pre-produced and work demo through all the songs. And then after that, you'll do more production. I had to figure out like, hey, do we need to change this piece? Does this need to be adjusted? From Ashes, I think, is a good example of it went to the studio as a completely different song. We kept the pre-chorus and chorus, and that's the only thing that remained on that song. So I think that's the kind of fun of being in the studio and rewriting stuff and working with Colin and Chris, So it's a long process really when you get down to it, but it's kind of fun too.
Yeah. And for you personally, and I'm making an assumption here that you write the lyrical content. So what's the inspiration for the lyrics for you?
Yeah, on this record, it was a lot about kind of mental health stuff, depression, anxiety. Again, I think many of us encountered that over the COVID years, being kind of, hidden away, trapped away from being able to kind of live out normal life, So for me, that's a big part of it, and just kind of accepting that mental health piece with myself, and being able to talk about it. I can talk about it. It's interesting. I can talk about it in my lyrics. But I have a difficult time in person to actually sit down and have an open conversation about it. So I think it's kind of the way I go through some of my healing and counseling of myself is through this. I mean, there's some relational topics in there as well. There's kind of talks about PTSD and some of those things in there. And yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, my hope on this is that people can acknowledge it, understand it, kind of relate to it, but also see that the lyrics do have a light to the end of the tunnel. And it's it talks about some hard stuff, but you can kind of come out of it listening to it and go, well, I do see some hope in that, and I do feel the ability, or see the ability to be able to talk to somebody about it and have a conversation if I need help. So things can be, we all do it. It doesn't matter age, gender, where you live, what you do. We all go through a lot of these things, and that's, I think, what people are going to relate to.
Yeah, absolutely. And when the reviews come in, do you pay any attention to what the critics have to say about your albums?
I'd like to say no, but I totally do. Yeah, I do. Yeah, I mean, I suppose it's one of those things. You put so much time and effort, and you try so hard with it, that you take pride in what you do. You wouldn't do it if you weren't proud of it. So I think you always have to take everything with a pinch of salt. is really what I do, you know. I do pay attention to it, but at the same time, everybody's got an opinion, and not everybody likes what we do, right? So you gotta sometimes get a mixed bag of stuff. I mean, I think for me, the most important thing is the fan reaction to it.
Mhm.
You know, if I feel pretty proud of what I did, and I didn't kind of phone it in. I'm not trying to be anything other than who I am, and I was genuine with myself and honest with myself lyrically and what I'm doing, and feel good about it. Usually fans can see through bullshit, see through, you know, they figure it out real quick. They're very savvy. So I just hope the fans kind of see that we're just really trying to do something ourselves. We're trying to push the boundaries a little bit, and you know, I think, and if they can see that we love what we do, it's a big important part too, you know. So
Yeah. And going back to your previous album, The Sinner, it was released in the midst of the pandemic, really. So how hard was it for you to grow Kill the Lights as an entity, a fairly new entity at that point, without being able to go out there on the roads to tour that album?
yeah, I mean, it's probably couldn't release a record at a worse time in the last 100 years, really, to be honest, could we? But we'd sat on that record about a year. It'd been recorded and sat, and we didn't, you know, we didn't know, nobody knew at that time what was going to happen with COVID,
Mm.
and we didn't want to delay it another year or anything silly like that. We needed to get it out, you know. So it was very hard to release. It was very hard to kind of continue the momentum, you know. And we had a lot of things booked and scheduled for touring and everything in advance of this, and it just didn't happen, right? So I think we're really excited to be able to get behind this one and actually do some tours and kind of meet our fans. Is really the most exciting about it. Kind of feels like our first real release, you know.
Yeah.
Which is exciting.
And have you been able to do anything differently on this album cycle compared to the last one then?
You mean musically or just with preparation for the release?
Absolutely anything.
So, yeah, we were able to get together and be in a studio together. That's huge. You know, I think the music industry and press as a whole has is in a different space, right? Different space now too. You know, I think they and even being on the tour, right? I mean, even coming to the latter part of the last cycle, we were kind of restricted by COVID regulations on being able to tour there too. So I think fans are back in the venues.
Yeah.
Fans are more engaged in music again. They're excited to be back with it. Music press and labels are back to doing what is normal stuff for release, and so we're embracing every piece of interview, press, and everything we can, because we're just excited to have people interested in the project.
Absolutely. So you're signed with Fearless Records. Do they put any pressure on you to release albums to a specific timeline? Are they already on you for album number 3 as an example?
No, like I have to say, I've worked with many labels over the years. By far the best label. Zero pressure. There was discussions about having this album coming out 3 or 4 months ago, and my son had some medical issues, so they were like, "Let's just put it back. It's not a big deal. Let's just take care of your family." You know what I mean? So whether it comes down to just kind of like the amount we're writing, or the style which we're writing, or the release schedule, like it couldn't have been better, and that team kind of been honestly more helpful. You hear a lot of negative stuff about labels. I've got not one bad thing to say. It's kind of crazy, but they've been just so supportive.
And that's great to hear, because you do see, as you said, you hear some horror stories about labels.
Yeah, and like I said, a big thing for us when we went into this is when we had initial kind of conversations with them, is like, you know, they got the vision. They didn't have a band really like us on the label, and they loved what we're doing. They didn't want to change what we're doing. So there's been no input whatsoever from the writing standpoint, which is pretty cool. I think a lot of bands sometimes become susceptible to having, hey, you need to write 10 more songs like this song. You know what I mean? It's not that. We haven't seen that. So it's been great.
Yeah. You've got a pretty extensive headline tour coming up through April and May throughout UK and Europe. And one of the issues we see in the UK at the moment is that people aren't buying tickets until the last minute, and we're still seeing show cancellations where promoters get a bit scared and cancel shows and things like that. So for anyone listening to this who hasn't maybe bought a ticket for your show yet and is still considering it, what would you say to them to get them to come down?
I'll buy 3 tickets. Come on. I'm just kidding. No, I mean, like you say, I think even speaking with our agent recently too, he's saying the same thing, now ticket sales have been good so far, so we're pretty excited about it, bear in mind it's our first headliner. But he's seeing the same thing, a lot of times people are waiting until the band the first date of the tour, and then they feel good about the fact that the rest of the tour is going to happen, and they were saying that happens in Europe specifically right now. That tends to be a really big case in Germany, but for us, I think it's we've seen good ticket sales already, which is really exciting. We don't even have the record out yet, so that comes out in 2 days, so we get that push, and we haven't announced the support acts yet, so even the ticket sales right now would be perfectly fine enough for us to go out and do this headline run. So we add everything else to it. We should be selling out some of these tickets, some of these shows for sure. So I'm excited to get that. So again, if you have not bought a ticket, please buy one. That would be great.
So after that tour, so as I said, extensive through April and May. After that tour, what's the rest of 2024 look like for you?
Yeah, so right now we're kind of in the midst of figuring out the next tours, without giving too much away, but obviously the plan will be to tour the US as well, so that's kind of on the radar right now. And then looking to, I think looking to get back in Europe later in the year after that again. So hopefully, as during the fall, kind of, hopefully September, October, November time-ish again, that would be the plan, I think.
Yeah.
And then cycling around, I think, looking already to be kind of getting on the festivals for the next year, not this year, but the following year is really the main plan at this point.
Yeah, and I think it'd be great to see you on a bigger stage on those outdoor festivals next summer.
Yeah, I mean, like when we look at kind of the venues we're playing for this headliner run, though, we love a good festival. We love a good festival, but we also like some of my fondest memories growing up were going to those kind of 150, 200, 300 cap rooms, absolutely crammed in there for a metal show. You know what I mean? You can't beat that. And we're super excited about that too. So these shows are going to be intimate. It's going to probably, it's going to be, I'm not sure how many times we'll play in this size cap venue. And we're just excited to be able to do it. So
yeah, looking forward to be honest. So as a final question for you tonight, and obviously your album is going to be one of the big releases of the year, but outside of that, what bands are you listening to at the moment?
Yeah, it's funny because it's come up a lot, and I was lucky enough to meet the Sleep Token guys going back about just as well 3 years ago now, before they really they were opening for Polyphia in LA. So we got to hang out with the guys a little, went to dinner with the guys a little bit. So it's really cool to see. I mean, they've literally blown up. I mean, that's night and day from where they were to where they are. So it's really cool to be able to see those guys get such great attention and really, bend the genre that they're in and have something kind of just something new and fresh, right? And people really embrace it. A couple other bands. I mean, I was just recently checking out the City Is Ours, UK band that kind of got a bit of a Bring Me Horizon vibe. UK band called Tova, again, bit of a modern take on metal / new metal / everything, So a band called Locust, which is a metal UK band too. That and again, some of these bands we've kind of become aware of. We've got a tour coming up, right? So but had some good conversations with the guitarist from Locust too, and that's a great UK band. That's kind of a collection of some really cool metal guys in there, really talented guys too. So I try to kind of like go down the rabbit hole of finding new bands too. I'm not sure about you, but I love finding like all three of those bands I just mentioned, and I'd not really come across until the last month, So it's like kind of going into the record store back in the day and getting a CD or whatever, and you're like so pleasantly surprised with something, you know what I mean? It's like, so yeah, that's kind of where I've been lately, but I still go back to my roots, whether it's listening to Testament or even digging into the earlier actually the new Machine Head record's great, but even the early stuff, that's great as well. So I kind of do like a weird kind of, I'll kind of go back to the roots, I'll come back, whether it's old school punk or whatever it is, it's I'll go through my phases.
Yeah,
but that's the name. That's the name. A couple of the more recent bands that are kind of just fresh to me that I've been checking out. So
James, it's been a pleasure to talk to you tonight. So Death Melodies is out on Fearless Records on March the 8th.
Thanks for listening. Make sure you keep up to date with all of our interviews by subscribing to our channel. For all the latest news, reviews, interviews, and more, head over to our website, www.therazorsedge.rocks.